Super. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Employment and Staffing Committee. Do we have Rebecca Margetts online? Is that Rebecca I can see? Super. Well,
Yeah,
welcome.
hi there.
Hello.
Hi, Rachel.
Welcome, Rebecca. It's great to have you join us on Employment and Staffing Committee. And I wanted to say thank you as well to Rachel Burgess, who has swapped out with you. Thank you to Rachel for everything that you did during your time with us. So this is going to be a meeting in two parts tonight. Most of the discussion is in part one, and part two is for discussing an issue with a named individual, and so obviously we will do that in private. So we've got a number of issues that we are looking at tonight. We've got the agency worker report, we've got a couple of new policies which are coming to us, and a discussion of the flexible working policy which we have, which is called Modern Workforce at the Council. The HR team are going to be very busy during the coming months. The Employment Rights Act is going to give HR people a lot more work to do, and I've discussed this with Sally and with Lou, and they feel the team is going to be in a very good place to meet these, because you're very good at making sure that the policies are up to date. A couple of other things that I wanted to mention. We have a number of groups at the council for particular groups of employees with particular needs, and they have just started a new one, and that's the Menopause Network, which is great. Employees are also now able to get telephone GP support, which is a very positive benefit and should reduce employee lost time. And I just wanted to say, and I have permission to say this, that Sally is going to be off for a few weeks for a routine operation. So our very best wishes to Sally for a quick recovery. So first item on the agenda is apologies. Have we got any apologies for absence?
No apologies.
No apologies for absence. Okay.
I'm en route at the moment. Sorry, I got stuck in Hatch Farm Way.
Oh,
so I'm on my way.
Fantastic. Well, hopefully we'll see you shortly, and hopefully you'll be able to keep up with the meeting online. I guess you've been held up by the huge traffic problems because of the electricity pylon there.
Yeah, and I also forgot that the road was closed, so I went right down it, and then there wasn't a sign, and I got as far as the road closure. I had to turn around and come back, which I should have known better. So apologies, I'll be there as soon as I can.
Oh, no. Oh, well, yes, I hope you have the rest of the journey goes a bit smoother.
Yes.
So the next item is minutes of the previous meeting. Do we have any comments about the minutes of the meeting on the 16th of September? Stephen?
Well, they only relate to the minutes in the sense that Rachel Burgess is mentioned, and I'd like to, if I may, second your thanks to Rachel for her service on the committee, and like you, also welcome Rebecca, who I'm sure will be a very good addition to the committee.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Stephen. So I can sign those. Perfect. The next item is declaration of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? No. Do we have any public questions, town or parish questions, or councillor questions? No to all of those. From Madeline. Thank you, Madeline. So the next item is going to be the agency worker report, and I am going to speak quite a bit on this. Welcome to Yusra Salman. Super. I've just rattled through things like apologies and declarations of interest. I guess do you have any declarations of interest, Yusra? No. Fantastic. And I was just starting on the first main item of business, which was the agency worker report. So this report is a regular fixture at this meeting, and we scrutinise this data to make sure that the council is engaging agency staff and contractors only when that's going to be beneficial to delivering services to our residents. And where that's not the preferred option, that we're taking steps to ensure that we can recruit enough permanent or fixed-term employees. We normally prefer as a council to take on employees, but there are some scenarios where it makes a lot of sense to engage turn turn on, turn off third-party resources used only for the time that the council needs them. And that can be the best way of staffing projects in particular, getting niche skill sets that we only need short term. And in that case, it can be the cheapest way of engaging people short term. And so we often use this kind of resource for example, highways projects and IT projects. It gives us those niche skill sets that we need for the exact time that we need them. If we go back a couple of years ago, we were engaging more agency staff than we felt was of benefit to the council, often because it was the only way that we could get certain skill sets. So, for example, it was the only way that we could make sure that we were getting enough children's social workers. HR initiatives, which Lou and Sally have brought in, such as training our own social workers and the agency framework for managing these contracts, they reduce the agency bill by about £2 million a year between 2023 and 2025. What we've seen since Q3 of the financial year 24 to 25 is that the numbers of these staff and the overall bill for agency contract staff has risen again. And the HR team believe that the demand for these staff is going to be at a higher level for the next few quarters. And this is largely because of the need for project work. So we've got changes to the Procurement Act, there's children's services reforms, which Prue is nodding, there's planned inspections in this area, and there's some investment in projects to increase productivity at the council. So the kind of project work which can often best be staffed by temporary resources, engaged only for the time that they're needed for those projects. There's also some points during this period that we're going to be looking at today, looking back into the past, where we've had to take on third-party staff, where we would actually have preferred for these roles to be covered by employees. So, for example, the service directors in children's services and place and growth, and the interim director of public health role. And the HR team have had considerable success in engaging permanent staff to these roles. There are some areas where we are still seeing roles that we would prefer to be covered by permanent staff. So, for example, some of the building control staff. And HR are taking steps to look at that. The issue here, it stems from staff leaving to join the private sector. And so the officers have met that by increasing the market supplement to help our staff retention. There's also, we just need to be aware, every winter we do see a spike in agency and contract staff need to deal with winter pressures. And in the next report that we see, we would expect to see that affecting the winter months. So we've been working on the format of this report over the last couple of years to improve scrutiny. This used to be a part 2 item. We now have it within part 1 in this part of the meeting, so that there is public scrutiny of it. And the report that we're looking at today is in a slightly different format from the ones that you've seen in previous employment and staffing meetings. What we're doing is we're working to separate out the background information, things which don't change very much, very quickly, from those things that have changed during the reporting period, which do need more scrutiny. And we would really welcome comments from people about the format and how that's working for you and whether there are other things that you would like to see. So we're also going to look to move the next financial year to this committee scrutinising this information every 2 quarters instead of every quarter, because we really want to make sure that we're focusing on strategic initiatives and their impact and the real changes in numbers, rather than noise that you might get because you've got a little rise in winter pressures, for example. So that's a very long bit of talking from me. So if I could hand over to Sally to introduce the report. Thanks.
Thank you. It's obviously a lot of the detail already been highlighted in the opening statement in terms of our spend. Our spend is slightly up, but there is rationale as to why we're in this position. Short-term projects that we're having to do, and it is more cost-effective for us to engage because we can turn that resource off quite quickly. I think it's been highlighted the success that we've had. So we are seeing a stable service director in cohort in children's services. We've been successful in deputy Director of Public Health, can't get my words out tonight. So it is showing that the initiatives that we're having and Woking being quite attractive, it is shifting some of that narrative. I think just to pick up on a couple of points that have been mentioned about building control. So yes, we're seeing a spike, but we're also now seeing an increase in applications coming in because of the initiatives such as the market supplement we've got in place. And success in legal as well, where we've typically got a high volume of locums. We're actually able to convert some locums from it. I think a lot of it's already been said in terms of where we're at as a council. We are anticipating a slight spike in Q3 and Q4, but that's typical at this time of year. But also we've been able to offboard some high cost interims during that period as well. So, okay.
Super, thank you. Now, I saw Stephen's hand first, and Prue was first, and Rebecca. I need new glasses. I think both Rebecca and Pauline both have their hands up as well. So, Prue.
I just wanted to talk about the children's services reforms that are going on. This is a wholesale restructuring required by changes in the way we were required to operate. And so they will, while they swap the teams round to do their work in a completely different way, they need some more capacity to keep the things going while they restructure and get used to working in a different way. So instead of working through, so the child, as they go through their journey with social care, would normally be handed off between teams, and now the team is going to follow them all the way through. So it's moving a structure from a sort of horizontal way to a vertical way, and that does require some extra capacity for a few months because there are things we haven't required to do by the 1st of April. So it's not a long-term picture. We've just got to get over the hump, and then we'll be all right.
Super, thank you. Shall I go to Rebecca online? I will go between here and in the. Apparently it was Pauline first. Pauline.
Well, I'm nearly there, so if Rebecca goes first, I'll be with you.
Perfect. Okay, Rebecca.
Thank you, Rachel. It's just about, I hope you can hear me okay from Devon. So just about a little bit of instability that's going on within housing at the moment and what the overall strategy is for that with the movement of staff. We've had quite a few interim positions, a lot of staff leaving. Well, it seems like a lot of staff, but it isn't, but some key members of staff, that's probably the correct way to say it. So kind of what's the long-term strategy for that department?
Hi, Rebecca. Thanks for your question. So the organisational realignment of housing has moved it from a place and growth directorate into adults, children's and health and Matt to make sure that we can start to continue the good work that's already happened in place about making sure that we have people-centric services and thinking about the people who live in our houses as well as the houses ourselves, and really kind of thinking about that community-based aspect that we've seen being so successful in adults and children's. From a stability point of view, I'm working really closely with housing services myself, and I can give reassurance that we are meeting regularly with the senior leadership team in there. I met with them again today. We are arranging in-person sessions next week with officers from across housing. And whilst any change can be disruptive, I can give assurance that we are working really closely to listen to housing services about what they feel they need to be able to continue the good work that the team is doing, because they're a really passionate and dedicated team. And I'm really confident that the work we're doing, obviously led by Matt as the exec director, will continue to bring success for our residents and also for the housing services, because, as I said, they're a really dedicated service and are committed to supporting our residents, and we're really lucky to have the officers we have in that team.
Super, thank you, Sally. Shall I go to
Thank you.
Stephen next and then you, Pauline? Is that okay?
Thank you. If I may just add to what Sally said on that point, and then I'll ask my question. or make my point. It's not actually a question, I'm afraid. I would endorse everything that Sally's just said, and I do think, if I can reassure you a little, Rebecca, I think things are now pretty stable. We have a new senior officer who's arrived, who's, I think, doing a good job in stabilising the situation and giving everyone confidence that we're going to be moving forward in the right direction. So I'm feeling quite optimistic that things are going to be fine in the housing service. There's some extremely good dedicated officers in there, as Sally said, and we're just trying to make sure that everybody feels that we're all moving together, and I think that's working. My point was really about the agency and interim and etc. spend, and a lot of it is on projects, as has already been indicated. And those projects, it's worth remembering as we put all this extra spend in context, a lot of those projects are actually what we would, I think, can describe as invest to save initiatives that will actually produce significant savings in the future. So we do need to put expenditure now in that context, and that's particularly true for the Chief Exec's office, where we've got the digital data and technology projects which are designed to increase our productivity. That will have a very beneficial effect downstream.
Super, thank you. And I know another thing that I've discussed with both Sally and Lou is that very often we get grants, government grants, to do things which would benefit to our residents. And because those will be delivered via projects, very often we will need temporary staff in order to be able to deal with those things which very much do bring benefit to our residents. And Pauline, I think you were next.
Thank you, and apologies for being stuck on the road, and I should have realised that road was shut. So I did know that, but I still drove down it. So anyway, yeah, to be fair, I don't think there was a sign at the end, but, well, there was at the end, but not where I was turning. Anyway, a couple of things. First, I was a bit concerned about the movement of this agency worker report to half yearly, mainly because by the time the whole point of these reports is to be able to react to something, and if you only have it twice a year, you've got precious little opportunity to do anything as a result of the discussion. So I'm not particularly keen on moving it to half yearly, I must say. I don't know if it's a huge overhead to do it, but presumably you monitor it a lot more frequently than quarterly. So therefore, I personally would prefer to stay with quarterly if that would be possible. And I don't know, Chairman, if you'd think about it. The second thing was agency headcount. I completely understand projects make sense. Can I have some reassurance that we're not in the nobody gets sacked for buying IBM position where we're taking consultants on to reinforce what we already know, because somebody will listen to an external consultant, but they won't listen to our internal staff?
From an IT point of view, I can absolutely reassure you that that isn't the case. And I think that is typically where you'd get that kind of borrow your watch to tell your time type scenario. I can absolutely confirm when we bring temporary experience, it will be for services or skill sets that we don't necessarily need to have on a permanent basis. It's where we're doing a specific infrastructure or very deeply technical piece of work where we need that skill set for a project, rather than to retain it on the kind of permanent revenue budget on a regular basis. So.
Thank you, Sally, that's useful. And there was a question for Prue, actually. I might have missed something when I was moving from car to road to office, but the changes that you're doing to children's services to be linear and stay with the child rather than have them handed over again makes sense. Is that something that we're being told we have to do, or is it something that we're choosing to do?
We have to do it. There's a whole new model brought in by this government about how you have, well, it's just called social care reforms, children's social care, and it's just like, let's reform every single thing to do with social care and children. So there's, amongst the things we have to do, we have to have these best start in life hubs, for example. So we haven't got those. We've got we're inventing hubs and we have to do it by the 1st of April. But at the same time, we have to remodel how we handle children. And there's a whole new different operating model, which has taken months to work out. And we just need those staff to get us over that hump while we swap the systems over. But there's no choice about doing it now.
So did the government give us any money towards it?
Given us a very small amount of money. I can't remember how much, but it's very small. It's 132,000, I think, or something like that. It's like, it's not going to be enough. But it in the long run, we will, I think, have slightly more staff, but we will have a much more effective operation. It will, and we'll be doing much more at the early stages to save the money with the long term. In the long term, because by having to do less invasive interventions. So it will be a better model, we think, and staff are embracing it, but it is a big change for everybody.
I mean, logically, it sounds like it'd be better for everybody. It's better for the staff and better for the children as well. I would have thought the continuity of not having to hand over would be sensible. I was just wondering what the cost was and whether we were getting anything towards it. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Don't take me as gospel on the money. It's something like that. But Sally's looking as if she. Yes.
Sorry, how much is it costing?
How much is it costing? Oh, it's very complicated to unravel everything that's cost. Yes, there's a whole there's a large slug of money in transformation and that kind of thing, which is where the money's being spent. But that covers a multiplicity of projects, different things. There is a paper somewhere about it. So I think there must have been a bid that went to Ovian Scrutiny somewhere. Was it in? No.
It might have gone to children's and I wouldn't have seen
might
it.
have, yeah.
Yeah. Be useful to see. I'll have a look.
I mean, is that something that we might be able to find and pass over to Pauline outside of this meeting? Yeah. Fantastic, thank you. And Yusra.
Thank you, Rachel. How many agency workers are in the post in the last 6 or 12 months in different directorate?
We've got the agency headcount that will report the figure as a whole for the council. I can't give you the specifics on the numbers per directorate tonight, but it's certainly something I can provide to you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And
yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
So in terms of like performance monitoring for the agency workers, how you would monitor them compared to the permanent staff? Like what are the parameters that you follow?
We use exactly the same sort of processes. It's basically setting clear objectives when people start with regard to what outcomes that we actually need. Obviously making sure that we're then regularly checking in with those individuals to make sure they're actually delivering on those objectives. And it's all done through our performance management process. That will be written up, that will be clearly demonstrated back to then the person. And if they're not performing, especially from an agency perspective, and they're not delivering, then we will let the person go and we will then re-look to get the skill and knowledge that we actually need to deliver the piece of work. So hopefully that answers your question, Yusra, but basically it's making sure we set clear objectives as we would with our staff. But it's a bit different with regard to agency staff to our permanent staff with regards to obviously the letting go side of things, but it's actually a little easier from that perspective, just because we give very clear instruction on what our requirements are when we go into the contract for that particular individual.
So how you get rid of them if they are not performing?
We go straight to the agency and we will inform them that we no longer need those services because we're not getting the outcomes that we actually require, and they will be let go. That sounds quite harsh, but the majority of the time we recruit properly to the skill and knowledge that we need. It's very rare that we find ourselves in that type of situation, but I suppose it's just reassuring you that it's being clear that we will set the requirements of the role to undertake and get the outcomes that we actually need. Sally, want me to add something?
I was just going to say we are incredibly lucky again, and we have our agency workers are hugely valued in our organisation. They are here to do, and in the main, do a fantastic job. If there are issues, as Lou says, we have the right processes in place to address them, but they are treated with the same value and respect as our other officers. And it was just really important that we don't have a different way of performance managing individuals. Obviously, any underperformance is managed as Lou described, but the agency and interim workers we have are part of our team, and are treated as part of our service, as I hope that you would expect us to say. So
That's their right, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Thank you.
Super. I think, Pauline, you had your hand up again.
Yeah, it was just to come back on the point about whether we could have this report, even if it's not the report, just the data, more frequently than every 6 months.
I think maybe if we take that away and we have a look at it, one of the reasoning for us going to a 6-monthly report was because we're very much wanting to do a really thorough analysis, to have more useful information in this report about what's happened during the reporting period. And that's harder if you're coming up with that on a quarterly basis. I mean, if you go back a few years ago, it was a report which had very much the same information every time it came to us. And what I've been doing working with Lou and Sally is to say, well, what's really changed during the past period? So we will take that away, and any other suggestions. I mean, you made a very good suggestion there about headcount by directorate. We will take that away, and we will look at it, because we want to make sure that we are doing what's best for a really deep analysis of the real changes within these numbers.
I think there's a risk that you do too much deep analysis rather than actually, there's some things that are based on the data and some things require deep analysis. And I wouldn't like to see 6 months worth of very deep analysis that means that by the time you work out something's gone wrong, you've already wasted most of the year. So I'd ask you to think again about it.
Okay, thanks. I've noted that. Did we have any more questions or comments? Prue?
I'm looking for the money, but there's a very good description of what the social care reforms are in the November agenda for Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny, item 46, which describes everything that's going on.
Super, thank you very much, Prue. So I think the action on us tonight is simply that the committee notes the information contained within the report. I'm happy to propose that. Stephen has seconded. All those in favour? Super. I think that was everybody. Paulie, yes. Okay. Put your hand up briefly and then you were turning the page. Super. Thank you very much. So the next point is on policies, and you'll be very glad to know I'm going to say an awful lot less about policies. So Lou and Sally have been working very hard since they joined to make sure that all of our policies are very current, are very up to date, and are very clear and in line with the law. So these are two regular updates that we have here with the disciplinary and the grievance policy. And I just wanted to note before I hand over to Sally that we get these at a point where the officers have got a good idea of the direction in which we're going with policies, but it's not yet been through full discussions, and most importantly, the 3 Cs process, which makes sure that the language and the spelling and the grammar, and most importantly, the clarity is correct. So these are not the finished article. They are midway through the journey. I think that would be right to say, Sally. Yeah. And it's the most useful point, I think, at which we can add value. So if I can hand over to Sally again.
Thank you. So the first one is the grievance policy. So we do have a grievance policy in place at the moment. We had it refreshed, I think about 2.5, 3 years ago. But as Louise and I have been here within the organisation, started to try and shift some of the processes that we have. We've recognised that the grievance policy needs a bit of a rewrite, hence us bringing this through tonight. We want to make sure it's more structured. We've based a lot of the changes on feedback from people within the organisation, managers that would be hearing managers. saying the process isn't quite as clear or defined as it could be, but also looking at what we've been dealing with as an organisation as we've come through. So it's making sure we're more structured, we've got a clarified approach to grievances within the workplace, but having that solid framework in there as well. We've also put in, which is new, a clear time frame for grievances to be raised within, because what we've also seen is a lot of legacy things that have been brought up from 18 months, 2 years ago, which is really hard to deal with as an organisation. So having a clear defined time frame for the submission of legitimate concerns to be addressed. So it's a bit more, it's more robust, it's good practice based on ACAS. We do a lot of benchmarking with other councils as well, just to make sure when we're writing policies that they're similar, because we're all in, you know, from a local government perspective, we should all have the same approach, thinking about our underpinning terms and conditions as well. So yeah, it makes sure more than anything it's fair, it gives clarity, and it complies with best practice. There we go. I don't know if anyone's got any questions.
Sorry, I was just going to say there was one point that was just raised, I think, that we just wanted to clarify, I think on page 22, which was just around how we'll be informing people about the outcome. We state within 7 days, and within here, and this is where the clarity piece definitely will come in with regard to our next stages. It sort of gives the impression that that would be by post and through a letter. It is a letter, but just to reassure you, we do that by email, and we will always make sure as part of the process that we agree what email we're using, so that, again, there isn't that hold up with regard to actually receiving outcomes or anything within the policy, to be fair, about notification, and so that we keep within our timelines, because again, from a process perspective, that becomes quite important if you're having to progress things. So I just wanted to make that point, because I think Prue had actually come back and just raised that with us, and so I just wanted to make sure we clarified that, so thank you.
Super. Pauline, you got a question?
Yeah, the thing that I was particularly interested in is 8.8, grievances raised after leaving employment. I think that's a bit unusual. I just wonder if you give me a bit of rationale behind that.
It's something we have in our existing policy. Again, it's quite standard for local government to do it. I think sometimes if a person has a concern, makes a decision to leave the organisation for various reasons, it's a mechanism that the council has the ability to respond to those concerns. So we don't get many. We may get 1 or 2 a year. But it's just that way that if somebody is leaving because they are concerned about how they perceive to feel about the organisation, it gives us an opportunity to formally respond to those. So
I'm talking about ones where they haven't raised any form of complaint until after they've gone. And that is, I think, unusual. I'm not saying it's unusual in the public sector, in the private sector. I'm saying it's unusual from my experience, that's all. I don't know what happens in councils. The thing I don't really understand is what action you can take as a result of it if they've already gone.
It's limited in terms of it. I suppose if we think about changes, I think Rachel mentioned at the beginning that the Employment Rights Bill, there's significant legislative changes in cases of unfair dismissal. So I just think it allows the council that ability to look at something transparently and fairly and give somebody a decision, because they may pursue alternative options.
So you think it's mostly used when somebody's been dismissed and then they come back and say, yeah, didn't like that? Is that...
Not necessarily. It can be that they've made a decision to leave employment, that they've gone elsewhere or they've not gone anywhere, but they have legitimate perceptual concerns about how they feel. I suppose it can be precursory sometimes to tribunals as well. So it's a balance, really. Like I say, we don't get many, but it's just that opportunity that allows the council to look at what they're saying before they may decide to progress it. And actually, it's fairly good practice to have it in. And a lot from an ACAS conciliation point of view, they would say, well, did you try and resolve your concerns with your employer before you left? And by having that in, it gives us a chance to do that.
But I think the point is, I'm not talking about the ones that you raised whilst you were here and then left. I'm talking about ones that you didn't even mention before you'd have gone. That doesn't fit that ACAS model of raising a problem before you left. It's about people raising. I'm just interested in the concept of people raising a grievance that they've never ever mentioned when they were in employment after they've gone.
Yeah, I think that there are occasions where people will do that. It's every individual will make a decision that they feel is right for them, but yeah, we do get people that do that. So,
would it be possible for me to add this before I bring you in, Yusra, that both my current private employer and my previous private employer, so we're going back there the best part of 10 years, have had this ability to raise a grievance after you've gone. So if you are dismissed, for example, there will always be, as part of that process, you will be allowed to appeal the decision. This is slightly different, and I do think that it is of quite significant value. It may be that somebody has had something that they weren't happy about, that they didn't feel for whatever reason, that they weren't able to raise at the time. Obviously, any employer, any good employer will try to avoid that, but you can learn things sometimes after people have gone. And also, I think pretty critically, something that Sally has mentioned, if somebody is disgruntled and they are maybe considering taking this down a legal route, it does give you the opportunity as an employer to be able to reach a resolution with them, to hear what the person has to say and to explain why we have acted as an employer the way that we did. And if we feel that we need to change tack in the future, if we need to learn from what the person has to say, to be able to do that. So I think that is quite an important factor in risk management. So I would absolutely endorse that that is in there. And I think I would say from my experience during the last 10 years or so, that is quite standard now. Yusra, I think you were next, and then Stephen.
Thank you, Rachel. How many grievances you have received in the past 3 years?
again, yeah, it's not a figure I can provide off the top of my head, so we'll be happy to provide that for you. We do have, as we've got within the policy now, we do have the informal elements of the process, so we're quite clear that we would accept a formal grievance once the informal elements have tried and sort of been exhausted. We don't have as many now as we used to have, thinking about the work that we're doing with managers, developing our managers to handle conversations slightly differently and looking at how we support managers to be the best managers in the workplace. But I can certainly look at a high level figure for you and bring that back. That's not an issue at all.
So you talk about managers, yes. So the managers, I'm sure they are regularly trained to handle grievances properly, yeah, because that's really a crucial part here.
Yeah, we've got a lot of initiatives to upskill our managers. So we've got a lot of an OD program at the moment. So we are, as part of that, handling difficult conversations, looking at managing performance and people as well. So that will tailor, some of that is tailored to deal with scenarios like this. But our policy, a lot of the time, the informal element will work where we can sort of ward off a formal grievance coming in. And that's part of what we're trying to share with managers about how we upskill them to have those supportive conversations and avoid that from coming in.
And I'm sure this policy has been a benchmark against other local authorities, yeah, surely.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just also add, sorry, Chair, just with regard to, just in addition to what Sally's just said with regard to training, we've also had ACAS in as well to do training specifically around grievances and disciplinaries and investigations. So just to make you aware. Yeah.
I think it was Stephen and then you, Pauline.
I suspect that training will help to answer this question, which is really about how one judges what constitutes a good faith grievance and what constitutes a vexatious one, because these are obviously matters of judgment. And I guess, you know, the crucial thing is who is making the judgment about what is or is not vexatious.
So again, it's always done through an investigation. We don't just receive a grievance and then decide on the spot that that has become vexatious. It would still need to go through a process, and as part of that process, it should then be a decision that is made on the information that has come out through that, talking and interviewing people and finding out the facts of what's actually happened.
That sounds absolutely fine and it's reassuring, but would it always be a judgment on a vexatious grievance, whether it is or is not vexatious? Would it always be the judgment of one manager, or will it be more than one person involved in making that judgment? Because you could envisage a position where a manager feels there is a challenge being made to the way in which their particular department is run, by implication, if not directly, and therefore is reluctant to accept the grievance. So do we have a kind of check and balance to ensure? I'm sure we do, but just...
Yes, absolutely, we do. Within HR itself, so HR it supports every formal grievance. And then if there was a case of a vexatious, which is then an unusual set of circumstances, we would then escalate that up to a board that we have within HR. So that would first of all go through to sort of senior business partner, cascade up through the system to Sally if required as the head, and even to myself if it's getting that difficult. But again, it's making sure you've got those checks and balances in place, because if you are making that type of decision, it's quite a big decision, and there could be risk attached to it if it's not felt that it's been completed in the right way. Did you want to just add one thing? I can tell.
And I think it's that value add from us as a profession, as HR, in terms of the shift in where we've been as an organisation to where we were. It was a point where managers were having to do some of this alone. So I've been really clear that HR have to be in these formal meetings, because we're there to balance but protect the organisation from risk as well. So it is a sort of a defined process that we are confident that we're doing the right thing. So there's a lot of checks in when we get to a point in response to certain grievances that are raised.
I was fairly sure there would be, but it's very great relief to hear, so thank you.
Super, thank you. I think we had Pauline and then Yusra again.
Thank you. Just two more questions. Looking at the appeal process, is the appeal manager senior to the manager that held the original? What do you do to avoid everything ending up, or to avoid things ending up with the chief executive? Is there a sideways thing as well?
So sometimes I might service directors might be able to take on certain roles. I suppose the service director for HR and OD, sometimes I can take on that role. But there's also the constitution, Pauline, from the point of view of making sure we're following that. So the chief executive is only ever involved if it's a director that is the subject. So it's only at that level, nothing. I don't mean that in the fact of... because otherwise it would go from one director, say, if it's a service director, to another service director.
Well, that's what I was asking. So it doesn't go AD director, chief executive. So it goes AD director, other director.
Yeah, it could be.
Okay, that makes sense.
Sally might have heard it, and then Graham Ebert may then hear the appeal for it, for example.
So that was the first. Thank you. That makes sense. The second question was about recording and monitoring. It says you must keep records. The thing it doesn't say is how long you retain them for. Is there a retention policy? And if so, maybe you should put it in the policy.
Yeah, there is a retention policy for employee, and it's 6 years, but we can update that.
Super, thank you. Yusra.
Thank you, Rachel. Has council considered any external audits in terms of handling grievances? Or is just within the council, it's manageable at the moment?
Yeah. We haven't, but again, the only time you would ever bring an independent investigator into it would be, again, if the constitution states that we would need to. So everything below service director and below, you wouldn't need to bring in an independent. The only time you would is, as I say, if you go into director and above, that might be a requirement.
So you have You have a governing body outside. Okay.
Yes, so we've got the Local Government Association we can go to. We also have an organisation called South East Employers as well that we can use. So again, you would always look for reputable, again, making sure that they've got all the qualifications, etc., needed to do something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Super, Prue.
I just wanted to go back to Yusra asked for some statistics about the number of grievances in the last 3 years. If you're going to do that, can you include in those figures how many of them were successful and how many appeals there were and all that information, and whether any of them were vexatious? Just we have to view in the round. So it's, yes.
I think that's yeah.
Yeah,
that's a really good
thank
idea.
you. Just so we can then get some comfort about what, yeah, how are things working. Yeah.
Super. Are there any more questions or comments that people would like to make? Madeline, am I allowed, because the wording for both item 24 and item 25 are identical, can I ask for these to be considered together?
No.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I will. I'm just trying to save myself a few seconds there. So, so first of all, item number 24, the proposed new grievance policy. The recommendation is that the committee agrees the content and approves the policy in principle so that we can consult and implement the delegation for any minor amendments be made in line with the Constitution and delegated responsibility to the Service Director for Corporate Services. I'm happy to propose that. Stephen has seconded. All those in favour, and I think that's everybody around the room. Thank you very much. And then the disciplinary policy. Oh, I am so sorry, Rebecca.
I didn't, I was just agreeing.
You were just
I was just voting yes.
Okay,
Yes.
fantastic. Okay. I did glance up at the screen before I suggested that we move to acceptance, just to make sure that you didn't have your hand up. That is true. That is true. And then the proposed new disciplinary policy, if we can go with the recommendation there on page 25, which is identical to the one that I've just read out. Again, if I propose and Stephen is seconded, and is everybody in favour? Super. Pauline, were you in favour of that? Sorry, Pauline was in favour, and hopefully Rebecca online as well. Okay, thank you very much. So then the final item for part 1 tonight is modern workforce. So we spoke a bit at the beginning when we were talking about the agency and contract worker report, about some of the successes that the HR team have had in attracting the employees that we need. And part of the reason they have been so successful, particularly with some roles which are really difficult to recruit for, and some very senior roles, is that where we can, we offer flexibility in working, which is something that now most large and established organisations do. So at Woking Borough Council, we've got a structured approach which we call modern workforce. Now this, as with everything else that we do, it puts the need of the community and the residents first. And it looks at how we can serve them best. And where it is compatible with that overriding aim, we do offer our employees reasonable flexibility. This has been very successful in the last few years, and the council's now at a point where they would like to formalise the framework, which has been used over the past few years, and we want to formalise that into a formal policy. And the principles of this is the proposal which Louise and Sally are bringing to us tonight. And in developing this, what they very much did is they led on where there were areas for improvement. I wanted to say that because, you know, it has been extremely successful, but they looked at those areas for improvement, and that's led into this proposal. So, Sally, I think, again, I am handing over to you. Thank you.
Actually, it's just me to start with. Sorry,
right.
Chair. No, it's okay. I'm going to hand over because, as I say, she's done a lot of the consultation, etc. I think it's also just what I just wanted to add, and I think you sort of, we brought this item to Personnel Board it was then called, in June 2023. And it's been since then that we've been trying out this sort of proposal with these then set of principles. I just wanted to put that timeline and just the fact that we brought that through at that period. But Sally, you've been leading on the consultation engagement we're doing, so I'm going to hand back to you as Rachel did.
So we initially brought this through in 2023. It was a framework where we were sharing with what was personnel board about how we envisage being. We'd got a lot of hangover legacy things from COVID that we really hadn't adapted to formalise any of that. So since 2023, we have done a significant amount of engagement with everyone across the council in terms of our staff, our service directors, our corporate leadership team, managers, about getting that understanding, and we've really managed to work out where we were at as an organisation, the direction of travel we want to be in. We've co-produced this, so we've had focus group sessions with our staff that were really well participated in. We've hosted big chat sessions as well, just talking about, as we've moved through the framework, to give that understanding to our staff and our colleagues about the direction of travel. So you'll see from the slides that we've brought through where we're at in terms of our worker styles. I think when we'd originally brought them through, we got three very different names, but based on feedback, we've gone with fixed community, because we've got that focus on having people at the heart of everything we do, so community-based roles, and then hybrid. We'll be working with service directors and heads of service to assign worker styles to the role, not to the person. So again, it's focusing very much on the role, not an individual, and it's a business-based decision. We've got core policy principles, so it's always been about our service first, but having that flexibility, fairness and consistency, support our health and well-being, but a fundamental thing that came out of it is that human connectivity, making sure that we collaborate, and when we're asked to collaborate, we collaborate well. It underpins our aims of becoming that employer of choice. We are seeing some real success in areas where we really struggle to recruit, things like legal, where they're not local, and actually that job can be done further away, so it couples in then to our agency statistics where we're able to convert locums because of the way that we work. It really supports our aims of everything that we want to do, improve our engagement, our well-being, increase productivity, again, go back to that collaboration. But as part of it, we've defined a set amount of corporate expectations and then key expectations of a manager, how they'll manage it, but then key expectations of us as employees, whether we're a manager or we're a team member. It's those expectations across the board. I'm not going to read everything on the slides because you will have had time to digest it, but I think part of the, there's a graphic in there at the back, and it just underpins how this is connected to everything we're doing as an organisation, and particularly from us as a HR and OD function, and having that people, again, at the centre of everything we do, whether that be our residency communities, but also our staff as well. And our colleagues, so it touches on so much that we've got going, and again it's been a lot of work in progress, but our aim is to bring the policy to next committee. So that's it.
Super, thank you very much. And I think Stephen had his hand up.
Thank you. Well, several comments really. First, just to say, I think that on page 53, the table with the fixed, community and hybrid really summarises very well what is highly desirable, that we carefully define what the role is and what the requirements are accordingly. I think that's been done here. And I agree completely with the need to keep people at in focus as the principal component of all this, whether that's our residents or our workforce. And we're striking, I think, a really appropriate balance. And what I'm very pleased about is we are retaining enough flexibility to ensure we always are getting good people. And that's really important. We do need to have enough flexibility to ensure we get good people. And I think, from my point of view, I just really wanted to take this opportunity to say what a fantastic change there's been, a really positive change in the way in which the HR function has ensured we've got much greater rigour, consistency, in some cases policies where we never had policies, and I just feel very much more confident that this is the bedrock of our success in recruiting good people, keeping good people, and that's crucial as an organisation. So a big thank you, I think, for all the work that's gone into not just this, but a whole range of policies that we've been looking at, not just at this meeting, but in others as well. So thank you.
Thank you. I think is that Pauline and then Prue and then Lou.
I think what Stephen said, I completely agree with. I said as much to Graham actually yesterday. So it was a conversation with him. It said that I think the HR team here at the moment is really, really good, and I think you're definitely a credit to the organisation, and you've really moved it a long way forward. And yeah, I'd like to just echo what Stephen said, and then I'd like to ask you a question about the policy. So the question I had was about hybrid roles. So I agree that roles should be by role, but not by individual. But I think in some circumstances you find that individuals, although they're in a hybrid role for whatever reason, whether it's capability or mindset or whatever, knowledge, it could either be aptitude or ability or any of those things, isn't suitable for hybrid working, even though the job could be done in a hybrid manner. Have you got a way of dealing with that in here?
Yeah, firstly, thank you both for the recognition. It's really good to hear. So thank you. Yes, I think what we want is the structure around it being about the role, but ultimately you're engaged in that contract of employment. So if things aren't working, then I think in the proposed policy that we've got coming through, which should come through to committee next month, has an ability that the council can withdraw things if it's not working. Yeah. So there's the element, there will be more detail in the policy. So what we've said is if fundamentally things aren't working, then the council reserves the right to change, because it's a business-based decision, it's not statutory. The council has that ability to change its mind if it's not quite working. So use me as an example. I'm a hybrid worker, so I come down as and when's required. But fundamentally, if I didn't engage and said I'm not coming in, there's a mechanism for dealing with that. But also, it's very much driven by the business, hopefully. Yeah.
So would that end you in a grievance? So let's have a scenario. You've got somebody who lives in, I don't know, Cornwall or somewhere, and is not performing well, and the line manager wants them in to keep a closer eye on them and work out and give them proper mentoring and also work out what exactly they're doing, because they're obviously not delivering anything. So how would you then be able to bring them in? Even, and then would that end up in grievance, because actually you can't come in every day from Cornwall even if you wanted to?
Well, I think from I can assure you that isn't the case. From my perspective as a hybrid worker, I need to be in the office to meet the business need, and that is my commitment. And if I don't want to talk about, if the circumstance for the individual where they weren't performing, you can't then take a grievance out because it's not in my contract that I am kind of living in Cornwall. So this is an example. Yeah. Same for Sal. Yeah. I'm sure there's a more technical HR way of saying that, but that's
it's hard because we're both.
So basically through the contract, because basically you could be breach of contract. There's any number of things. Obviously we don't want to go there, and obviously I go straight to the worst case scenario. But it's like everything. It's like all of our performance tools that we've got and our performance management framework. That was where we would work to. As part of this, we will also be looking at updated contracts as well. Just to make sure that, again, just clauses in there that just are clear on what it is that we're doing. And a lot of this is around guidance for our managers as well. From the outset, when you're recruiting someone, you have to be open and transparent about expectation and what is then required. But I'm not saying you would never get a grievance, because a grievance is a grievance, but the point being there is you probably say that you can't upheld, it's possibly going to be one of those that's not going to get upheld, because obviously there's a role to undertake.
Good, that's very reassuring, thank you. And I only used Cornwall as an example because I looked at Sally and she mouthed Cornwall at me.
And I think one of the things I would say that this does do is it takes something which is already working, as I understand it, very well, and it introduces much more clarity for the individual, for the manager, about what is going to be expected. And you are going to be very clear what is and is not going to be possible for your job. And it's going to be a considered decision which has been made, not about you as an individual, but about the role that you are doing. So I think that, my understanding is that there haven't been problems, or otherwise we wouldn't be having this positive conversation now. But actually it should prevent problems from rising in the future.
It absolutely helps. It helps managers, because it gives that framework and it gives a clear expectation on both sides.
I think just to add as well, when we've done the amount of engagement that we've done with colleagues, so we're not talking about service directors or heads of service, with our colleagues that are front facing or office based, it's been really welcomed as saying, right, we've now got clarity of what is and isn't going to happen. And I think that's been part of it. It's 6 years this year, isn't it, since COVID? Yep. So we're still in that legacy thing where we've worked and we've been working as we are. And I think our colleagues are wanting this now, so they know there's boundaries and what the expectations are. It's been really welcomed. Absolutely.
Super, thank you. I think we've got Prue and then Lou Timlin.
I've got a couple of smallish points. I think the first one should be answered very quickly, but it's kind of looking at the point you just made, only the other way up, so that although the roles are defined in this way, if you need to make a reasonable adjustment for somebody, you can still do so. Yep. So that's the first point. And the second one is in the corporate expectations, you've got a list of corporate expectations. The last one is about clear guidance on children and childcare, but that's not the only caring responsibility. So you also need some guidance on the other caring responsibilities that it's not a substitute for either.
I think just to confirm, that will definitely be then in the policy. So we've got the headlines in here, and so we'll make sure that's in there. And also within the policy, it then links to other policies where there's carers time, which we've also brought into this, so special leave, which we brought in as a policy as well. So it's how we also link everything up with the interdependencies. But yes, thank you, and yeah, we will make sure that's there.
Thank you very much. And Lou Timlin.
Prue's just said what I was going to say, because I know I raised the question by email about caring responsibilities, and I'd also noticed the piece about children and childcare, and I'd had a personal experience where there was issues, but it wasn't children and childcare, it was caring for an elderly relative that was causing an issue. And it was just, I think this framework is really excellent for all the reasons everybody said. Everybody knows where they stand, there's clarity. Really importantly, there's consistency, and it stops them, well, why are they allowed to do that? And all of that stuff. And it just gives people that clarity of expectation. And just to do that over the whole caring responsibilities, I think is just really, really important, because there's a lot of misconception, I think.
Yeah, and absolutely. So again, just to reassure you, I think the other thing just to make, what this also helps is we have so many different professions as well within a council, and again it helps give clarity for our colleagues as well around that. So it isn't that thing of it's not fair, it's the fact they're very different job types that people are undertaking. So I think it's also helped a little bit with that understanding for our colleagues, when we've been talking about the different sort of requirements, because if people see someone leaving, they're probably not leaving, they're probably going off to do a site visit, they're going to do something that is required within the community. So I think it's really helped having that conversation more generally with each other.
Pauline.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been quite supportive of hybrid working. I think the important thing is performance management and making sure that the council or the residents or whoever pays the bill gets value for money and gets better service. And actually, in some ways, if you've got people working from home, it's sometimes easier to find them than if they're working in work. If you need to track them down. I've certainly seen examples of that in other places. Yeah, because they can't have gone very far. Just one other question or point, really. It's about data protection. I noticed that you've got a comment about making sure that the council's data is secure. I just wanted some reassurance about things like credit card handling and all that sort of stuff. I presume you don't do much of that anyway, but the appropriate blurring of credit card data, the appropriate making sure nobody's in the back of the room watching people who are handling confidential data about children, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so in the policy it talks about making sure that from a space perspective that you're in a private room as needed, etc. From a credit card handling, if we have, for example, people in our customer services who are working at home, it kind of stops the recording. We don't repeat back numbers, so there are processes and policies in place that support that aspect of it. So I can give assurance, and the policy just reinforces that. I think during COVID, a lot of people kind of made a lot of their, if they had a spare room, it became an office or a dining room, and I think a lot of that has naturally come up, but I think the policy gives that consistency, that clarity of expectation about what it means if you're going to be able to work remotely, because it's not always at home. So
the handling of confidential data, do you just trust people or do you check, or how do you do it?
We have an information acceptable usage policy that underpins it, and then through our governance process, Andrew Moulton is our data protection officer. We actually have a dedicated board to it about how we give ourselves the assurance to that kind of...
No, I understand that. So I ask you if you've got a secure position when you're looking at, social care data or whatever, and that you've got a room where nobody else can come in and read it over your shoulder, that sort of stuff. Do you actually just take people's word for it, or you do check?
So, I mean, we don't go out and do house visits if that's what you're referring to, Pauline, but it's part of our contracts when we're working with people, because you could say the same, that a laptop could be taken home at a weekend, couldn't you, and have the same risks. But it is, for us, it's about using our policies and our expectations through employee onboarding, the induction process all the way through, but also making sure that the service directors are our information asset owners, and that's where we kind of reinforce expectation. And then we have mandatory annual training on data protection, which reinforces all of the things you've just talked about, the expectation that we you can't save the data, because if anyone's ever tried it, you'll get an error message, that you're expected to be in a private place when you're working on your work laptop, that you shouldn't be overheard on your calls. So we put as much kind of rigour around that as possible. And then, of course, if that turns out that that hasn't been adhered to, that's where our policies around performance, and obviously in some... Thank you, ladies.
That's a really good question. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think that was a really good discussion. Yeah. Yeah.
I have one every 6 years or so.
Are there any more questions about the modern workforce? No? Okay. So the recommendation is that we agree the content and approve the policy in principle, so that we can consult and implement with delegation for any minor amendments being made in line with the Constitution, and delegated responsibility to the Service Director for Corporate Services. And I'm happy to propose that. Prue is seconding. All those in favour? Super. Thank you very much. And I think that was everything. So that's at the end of part one of the meeting. So I now need to read out a tongue twister to put us into part two, which is exclusion of the public, item number 27. That under section 100A brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 1 and 2 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act, as amended, as appropriate. And as I mentioned at the start of the meeting,